Hello ladies and gentlemen, today I'd like to talk about two-factor authentication and why it's the bad guy's enemy. I suppose first of all I better talk about what authentication is. Well, it's really quite simple. It's a way of identifying you to a computer system, and in general you can divide that into three separate things. Something that you know, something that you are, or something that you have. Something that you know would be something like your password. Something that you are would be something like your fingerprint, a retina eye scan, facial recognition, something along those lines. And lastly, something that you have would be something like a smartphone or something like a card reader. Now, different computer systems actually have different terminology for basically the same thing. I tend to call things two-factor authentication or 2FA. Some systems call it two-step verification, multi-factor authentication, so on and so forth. But basically, it's the same thing. So typically, when you set up an account on a system like email service or setting up something for buying stuff, you'll have to set up a username, very often your email address. You're going to create a password. Check out my video on creating a good one of those. And then you're in the system. If they offer two-factor authentication, then typically they're going to want to know your mobile phone number. That is used to then send a text message, which you'll then put back into the system, and then the computer system knows that you are the owner of that phone and then can use the phone to authorize access to the service that you wish. Let's give an example. Supposing you want to create a new email address. Well, you'll have to go through the sign-on process, or sign-up process rather, and that process will allow you to create an email address. You'll have to create a password and a few other bits of information, usually your age, the country that you live in, and also they'll often ask for your mobile phone. Now, if you have two-factor authentication enabled, so usually an option, then the email system will send a text message to your phone. That text message will have a PIN number on it, and then you'll actually enter that PIN number back into the computer system. Now what's happening is, by doing that, the email system actually knows that you are the owner of the phone, because you set it up as part of the sign-in process. And so if they want to prove that the person that's trying to access the email is actually the owner of the email, they can send a text message to the phone. You put the PIN number that's within the text message back into the system, and that just confirms that it's you. Well, that sounds a bit of a faff. The reason why two-factor authentication is quite useful is if you have just one-factor authentication, that's just a password, the bad guys are pretty good at guessing certainly weak passwords, and if you only have a password to protect your account, email account in this example, then when they've cracked your password, they've got access to your email and they can do all sorts of naughty stuff with that. But if you have two-factor authentication turned on, the bad guys may actually be able to crack your password, especially if it's a weak one, but at that point the system will actually ask for a PIN number that was sent to your mobile phone. And of course the bad guys don't have your mobile phone, so they are effectively locked out of the system and should never be able to get into your email account, even if they know your password. The good news is, all this to-in and fro-in, putting in PIN numbers and passwords into a system every time you want to use it, that does sound a bit tedious. So what computer systems tend to do is, when you've entered the password, the PIN number's been sent, you put the PIN number back in the first time, the system, email system in this example, puts a gold star, if you like, against the computer, laptop, desktop, smartphone, whatever it is that you're using to access your email, which is called a trusted device. In layman's terms, what this means is, the second time you log on to the system actually knows that this device has gone through this two-factor authentication process before, so it won't ask for the PIN number to be sent. That means that from the second time onwards, the sign-in process is much simpler. Now in reality what actually happens is the trusted device actually times out after a month or two. You will have to go through the sending and entering the PIN number periodically, but it's not every time, it's every few months or so. It's your judgment to make whether that extra work is a price that you're willing to pay. Final thoughts. Well, two-factor authentication, and I've given the example of using a mobile phone, but there are lots of other ways that two-factor authentication works. In the banking service, you tend to find that there's card readers that you stick your debit card into a card reader and then go through a process, and that gives you a PIN number that you put into the banking system. A lot of systems use a mobile phone. So, for goodness sake, if you lose your mobile phone, please go to your account settings and update to a new mobile phone number if you've changed the number itself. Also, a belt and braces method is, if you have the chance, also add a second email address into the account settings. If the system needs to prove that you are who you're saying you are, they can either send a text message to your mobile phone, or if that's unavailable, they can send a message to a recovery email address. A lot of systems allow you to put in both, so if you get the chance, that's always a good idea. And of course, lastly, don't lose your password. Computers remember passwords, especially emails, for example. You may tell your computer to remember your password, so for years and years, the computer just remembers the password. But when you change your system over or update something, you will require to know your password. And at that point, if you haven't got it stashed away somewhere safe, then you're going to run into trouble. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you enjoyed the video.